Hey guys, welcome back to Acres and Acreage. Today we're going to talk about the top 3 mistakes new land investors make. And I would say at some point over the last couple years, we've probably made at least one of all of these 3 mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's very safe to say. Luckily, we've been able to come through those mistakes,
Yeah.
but we're going to just speak from some experience to try to help you avoid these. And hopefully, these are some things that, some things that we're saying to you we're never going to do either. But, being human and mistakes happen. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is not researching the zoning or land use for your property. So when you're evaluating a property and you want to know what it's worth, and this is going to play into the second thing, based off what that property is worth for a certain land use. If you can't use your property for what those other properties are using, then it's not valued the same. Right. So an example that I'm going to make is if you're buying a property that's an infill lot, and the infill lots in let's just say certain subdivision are selling for $50,000 and they're buildable lots. And you have a lead on a property that's an infill lot in that subdivision, but for whatever reason, you're not able to use it for, let's say, a deeded restriction. Let's say it's a stormwater lot, or let's say it's not zoned the same and you can't put a structure on it. Then that lot is not worth $50,000. It might not be worth anything, to be honest with you. So you really got to know that you can use that lot for what you're wanting to use it for.
Yeah, and when you're researching your comps, make sure that you're looking at what other people in the area are using the land for, like Ty said, and make sure that your land can be used for the same use. We've talked about before how we are in the process of trying to complete a transaction where we acquired 3 properties and 2 of them were commercial. We actually did a really good job of researching the zoning and the land use and paying the right price for those because there were no comps available for those commercial lots. So just make sure that, like I said, when you're comping your properties out and you're doing your due diligence, that you're really getting into the weeds and figuring out if it's classified as a B2. What can I do with a B2? Is this comp a B2? Okay, what did they do with the B2? So just make sure that you're looking at it from all directions.
Yeah, something that I do in our spreadsheets that we use for underwriting deals is I have a a row in the spreadsheets for each comp that says marketed as, and I have 3 different rows of that. So some of the options in that would be a building lot and a subdivision, a large tract for building, a large recreational tract, a timber tract, different things that I pick up on in a listing that I'm using as a comparable that will be what that property was marketed for. And then I think about what is the lead property going to be marketed for. And if it's the same thing, then I want to go and verify that the zoning of those 2 were the same.
Exactly. So I guess that moves us on to mistake number 2, and that's overpaying for land. When you get a lead in, just because you put a price down on your offer, it doesn't mean you have to stick to that price. There's nothing, and we don't send contracts out when we send marketing out. I know a lot of investors and a lot of the people on social media and the gurus do, but we don't want a seller to think that we're going to be bound to something just because we sent them a letter. So our marketing is a starting place for negotiations. Most of the time, we've talked about before, a seller negotiates us up and we end up paying more, but that's not because we're overpaying. We're doing our research on the back end and saying, hey, this is something we want to help this seller out by giving them what they want for the property, but we can also use it on the back end to bring value to somebody else.
Yes, and so also when you're valuing land, a price per acre is not how you value every single kind of property.
Yep.
So if it is a building lot, an infill lot, or a lot in a subdivision. When I say a lot in a subdivision, it could be a little bit bigger. I've seen some out in Texas that are, 10-acre tracts within a subdivision, and there might be some variance there. But if it is in a subdivision or if it's an infill lot, you're valuing based off the sale price of the comparables. So when our first deal that we ever bought, we thought it was worth, we were valuing based off price per acre. We thought it was worth about $80,000. The comparables, and the reason we thought it was that is because the comparable properties in the subdivision were selling for a little bit cheaper, but they were smaller properties. They were between an acre and an acre and a half, and our property was 2.59 acres.
Right.
So we thought it was marginally more based off the price per acre. That's not the case. It needed to be valued at about what those other lots were, because somebody is only going to pay but so much for that lot in that subdivision, even if it's an acre more. That acre more doesn't mean that much more in that subdivision. It could, but it's not going to be valued the same. It's not a 1 acre, a 2 acre lot is not going to be double the price of a 1 acre lot. I've not seen that in any market. Now, a price per acre is going to be more valuable for or a valuable way of valuing land that are bigger tracts. And typically what we see, not everywhere, but it's a safe starting point, the lower the acreage, the higher the price per acre, and then it tapers off.
Yeah. And going back to the subdivisions, I mean, there are instances where lots within a subdivision can be valued differently, but that's typically going to be like riverfront or lakefront. Those properties that have the waterfront access are going to be valued more than the ones that don't. But like Ty said, if you're talking about the difference in an acre or a half acre, don't value those based on price per acre. Look at what the other lots are selling for in that subdivision and value it the same way, because luckily we were able to the offer that we sent on the property he was talking about, the seller negotiated us up $5,000. And we were still able to bring value to him. We got him his price, and then we sold it for not what we wanted to sell it for, but a price that we were actually very happy with to be our first deal. So just make sure that when you're valuing your land, you're not overpaying for it. And then the final mistake is just ignoring due diligence, and that's something that that we've talked about before, is due diligence and how we evaluate properties, and due diligence is part of that. And I'll try to link that video down below, but there's a lot of things that you need to make sure you're doing when you're buying these properties to make sure you're not making a mistake.
Yeah, so one of the big things in due diligence is, because we've been bit by this, make sure the person you're talking to is the actual owner of the property, and that there's not additional owners that they're not disclosing. And it's went as far as we've put in our contracts now that the person signing that contract is agreeing that they've disclosed anybody with an ownership interest in the property. And if not, then we can end up having them reimburse us for some costs that we have incurred to find that out. Because we've had an instance where we went under contract on a property, and it ended up being an heir of the property, but there was like 30 some other heirs, and that was not disclosed. And we didn't know this at the time. We had not even closed the deal yet, and we didn't know we could pull our own deeds. This property was in the state of North Carolina, and it is free and easy to do. You can go on North Carolina or go into localities on the internet and pull deeds for properties online. You can't do this in every state or every locality, but you can always call the Register of Deeds and ask for a copy of the deed. Sometimes they'll have to mail them to you. Sometimes they'll send them to your email, but you can pull the deeds yourself and see who actually has a deeded right to that property.
Yeah. And we're going to do some deep dives on the tools that we use for due diligence. But we use a lot of different tools to look at the due diligence options, things like access and utilities, making sure that those are available. If there's not public water or public sewer available, make sure that you're getting a perk test. We pay for a perk test on every property before we buy it. Some of the social media people and the gurus will tell you that you don't have to do that. We think it's too risky not to. But that's personal preference on our end, and that's something that one of our investors actually got us doing very early on, and I'm glad that he did, because we've actually had an instance recently where a conventional soil or a conventional septic system is not going to be available on one of our properties, but I think it's above grade or whatever it is.
Above grade sand mound.
Yeah. So just make sure that you make sure that when you're doing your due diligence, that the features that are available on the comps are available on your property too, or it's going to be valued differently. And like I said, we use a lot of different tools to do that. One big one is your phone, calling the county, calling in environmental health, calling the Register of Deeds, and then we're also using things like Land ID for topography, wetlands to make sure the property is not in a floodplain. All of this due diligence stuff can make a huge difference in whether or not you're making a mistake in buying a property or not.
Yep. I don't have anything else for that. Philip said it very well. And like he said, we're going to have some more deep dive videos. And we have a video that we released, I believe 2 videos ago, for evaluating land. We break down a lot of the tools that we use in that video. So if you're confused on the tools that we're talking about, go ahead and give that video a watch and make sure you like and subscribe. We're going to keep bringing these videos to you, whether you're buying land, just for yourself, your family, or you're buying land to flip it as an investor or buy and hold investor, we want to make sure you're not making the same mistakes that we have made in the past. So.
Yep, I think that's all we've got, guys. Like Ty said, make sure to like, subscribe. If you have any questions about what we talked about, put it in the comments. If you have a video that you want us to make, something you want us to talk about in the future, put that down in the comments as well. I think that's all we got today, guys, so we'll catch you next time.